Let me tell you one of the most important days as Kurdish people in our lives. It was July of 1991. I was 16. Our neighbor Vedat Aydın, an important human rights activist and a politician, was killed after taken into custody by the police. Days later, his body was found tortured under a bridge. Hundreds of people gathered in my hometown Diyarbakır for his funeral. While the crow was walking to the cemetery, we heard the shots. Masked special forces opened fire against the crowd from the top of the city walls. This continued for 20 minutes. Dead bodies littered the ground. As I look around, I thought, I never want to see this cruelty again. Never again. As a Kurdish woman living in Turkey, I have witnessed even worse cruelties. Nearly 30 years have passed since that day, but little has changed for Kurds. After the peace process collapsed between the Turkish state and Kurdistan Workers' Party in July of 2015, clashes began in Kurdish cities. The state declared military curfews in our cities and bombed civilians. More than 2,000 people were killed in our region since the clashes began. Our homes, our cities were demolished, and hundreds of thousands of Kurdish people are homeless today. Dead bodies remained in the streets for months. We have witnessed terrible human rights violations and war crimes. After the July 15 coup attempt, the state of emergency was declared in Turkey, and it continues today. The government has used the emergency rule to stifle all opposition. Hundreds of thousands of people have been fired from their jobs and arrested without any reason. Civil society organizations, media outlets have been closed. More than 170 journalists and writers have been imprisoned. Turkey remains the worst leading jailer for journalists. The situation in Kurdish region is even worse. Kurdish mayors and parliamentarians have been imprisoned, and state administrators have been appointed to replace the elected Kurdish mayors. Kurdish media has been completely closed. All political access has been cut off for Kurdish people. Today, in our region, the worst human rights violations and war crimes continue. A dirty war continues in my hometown. There are still dead bodies on the ground in rural areas. To be a human rights defender in our region means to fight against torture, to fight to bury dead bodies in a dignified way, to search for loved ones in mass graves. Sometimes it means to support the families under bombardment. And sometimes it means to save a Yazidi woman from the Islamic State. And the global community has done very little to respond to the violence against the Kurdish people. Such cruelty has been met with a deafening indifference. Indifference is a friend of cruel governments. Indifference is a friend of evil. Why are we giving power to these cruel governments? And why are we closing our eyes against these crimes? Crimes against humanity. After Rwanda, the world said never again. But it happened again and again. Never again should mean never again. Today, in Turkey, academics, students, teachers, journalists, doctors, even wedding singers, who criticize government policies, who demand peace and human rights, can be easily declared as terrorists. We are being killed, put in prison, and forced to leave the country. To demand peace is seen as a crime of terrorism in Turkey. People like me who demand peace and human rights are declared as terrorists. Do I look like a terrorist? These are very dark days for Kurdish people and for Turkey. But there are still people who struggle for human rights, for peace and democracy. There are unsung heroes in Şırnak, in Istanbul, in Diyarbakır, in Izmir, in Cizre. Some of them are recording human rights violations. Some of them are trying to stop torture. Some of them are giving legal support to the victims of violence. And some of them are retrieving dead bodies from the ground. I accept this award on behalf of these unsung heroes and for all human rights defenders in Turkey and especially in Kurdistan. And I accept this award for the people who still continue to struggle to bring light to the darkness in Turkey. I want to believe that never again is possible. Let's stop giving power to these cruel governments. Let's stop closing our eyes against these crimes, crimes against humanity. Let's make never again, really never, ever again. Azadi Nezike. Thank you.